All right, welcome to another episode of the NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. I am joined by Eric from Straight Out of Gotham podcast, and this week we're going to talk about the New York Jets. Lots to get into. Surprising 2022 start to the season, and we'll go ahead and preview the Jets Bears game that will be coming up soon. But first of all, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, man. I don't usually get to talk football on this kind of a platform, so this is going to be a fun time for me. That's my favorite sport, so I'm very, very looking forward to this.
Well, and I don't know, what your expectations were at the beginning of this season for the Jets, but fun and Jets have not been in the same sentence for a long time, have they?
No, they most certainly have not. They have the longest active streak without being in the playoffs in the NFL, I think. It's been over 10 years. I think 2010 was the last time they made it. So it's been a long time, many suffering years. And before that, it was suffering. They had, since Bill Parcells came, kind of smooth things out. They were good for, I want to say, a good 15 years. But then after Rex Ryan left, that whole mess happened. So.
Absolutely. Well, we won't get into the mess today, but let's go ahead and get right into this season. Obviously, the surprising start. What are your thoughts so far on what the Jets have done here so far in 2022?
Surprising to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect this kind of a season. I pretty much expected this season to be pretty much for Zach Wilson. To see how he was going to develop and grow as a quarterback. I knew they had talent. They added a lot of talent in the draft, and they picked up some good free agents. But I also knew that they were a young team. And then coming off of last year, I wasn't even sold on the coach. I wasn't sure the coaching staff was the right coaching staff. So this season has been a shock, a surprise, a pleasant surprise. And yeah, I'm just enjoying the ride right now. As a Jets fan, you kind of learn to put only one foot in the water and kind of wait and see what happens. So
Absolutely. And, with week 10, it was probably a great time to have the bye and just kind of sit back and watch, especially coming off that win versus Buffalo. Where does that win kind of rank, in just kind of, surprises and in maybe recent memory for the Jets?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest win they've had in years. And I hate calling regular season wins big wins. I'm not one of those people who likes to put too much emphasis on a regular season win, especially in the division. I feel divisional games are always a toss-up no matter how good or bad the team is. You usually get good games in divisional games. I mean, the Patriots are a perfect example with the Jets. Even when the Jets are bad, yes, they've blown them out a few times, but a lot of the games have also been closer than you think. So that game last week, though, kind of just reaffirmed everything we had been seeing, specifically on the defensive end, where the Jets really, really are becoming one of the better defensive teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean, with some of that, I mean, I'm a Bears fan, so I definitely pay attention to when they're playing divisional teams, especially the Packers, and with what the defense did, and then even Sauce Gardner wearing that cheese head coming off Lambeau Field. I mean, that had to be a nice feeling for you as a Jet fan.
Yeah, I like the youth because they don't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, Sauce Gardner has been better than advertised. Like I knew he was good. I mean, the guy didn't give up a touchdown his entire college career, so I knew he was very good. But I did not expect him to be this good, this fast against NFL quality receivers. I mean, Tyreek Hill's been beating up everybody. He put the clamps on Tyreek Hill. Now, yes, they didn't have Tua, so you could definitely, that's part of it. But he wasn't getting open. So I mean, and that's a very, very the reason is pretty much because of Sauce. And DJ Reed on the other side too. He was a free agent signing. He's been fantastic. Like I feel like they have the best pair of corners in the league. So yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at the secondary is probably the strength. What about the rest of the defense? Have been key so far, and where might be the kind of the weak point needs improving on this defense?
I think the defensive line is fantastic as well. Quinnen Williams is having a defensive player of the year type of season. Pushing the pocket. I think he leads all interior defensive linemen in pressures. He's good against the run, and he kind of makes everything else go. When he's not in the game, there's a marked difference in how their defense plays. And Salah likes to rotate guys in all the time, so he doesn't play every snap. And there are snaps when he's not in the game where it's noticeable. And there are even sometimes where he's not in. I'm like, it's third down. Why is he? Why is he not in the game? But he's been fantastic. Carl Lawson is starting to come on too, coming off the Achilles injury. He's been great. Every week he gets a little bit better, a little bit more looking like himself. John Franklin Myers, I know everyone knows the 2 penalties that he had that kind of cost them a couple of games, but he's also a disruptive player. And then Bryce Huff, he's a guy they took last year. He's really just a situational edge rusher. And whenever he's in the game, he makes a play. He seems to break down. He seems to he seems to win all his one-on-one matchups. He's really just a fantastic player. And even the other rookie, Jermaine Johnson's been coming on slowly. So the defensive line, to me, and the secondary right now are the two strongest parts. Probably the D-line a little bit more than the secondary. I think the safety position is hit or miss. But the one weakest position probably is linebacker. Outside of C.J. Mosley, I like Quan Alexander and I like Quincy Williams, Quinnen's brother. But Quincy still needs to learn to slow down a little bit. He kind of over pursues and runs past the ball carrier on a lot of plays. When he gets him, though, he could blow him up. He's a fierce hitter. So, yeah, that's probably the weakest position on the defense is the linebacking core.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this defense, and to have Jermaine Johnson, as a backup, and them able to kind of cycle players in and out. I mean, that's a really talented defense going forward for the future as well.
Yeah, I mean, you have enough first-round picks, and you pick defensive linemen. You hope eventually that they work out, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of been what's been happening. Quinn Williams, again, being the centerpiece, took him a few years to really find his way, but now he's hitting his stride. Like I mentioned, Jermaine Johnson. So those 2 guys really have been the stalwarts on the defensive line. And it's funny, Leonard Williams, who was a Jet, now playing for the Giants, he's also playing really well. So they've done a good job drafting interior defensive linemen for this team.
Well, on the other side of the ball, we look at let's just go ahead and go right into Zach Wilson. Now, I have to say I've not necessarily been a Zach Wilson believer.
Okay.
Where do you see is his kind of progression on this team, and how good can he be?
I think talent-wise, he could be great, especially arm talent-wise. He's got a superb arm. He could throw off different arm angles. He's starting to show a little bit of that too. Like in the game against Buffalo, he threw a couple of sidearm passes. He was kind of had to get around defenders. So I think based on his talent, he can be a great quarterback. He has all the little things you want physically, maybe not ideal size. He's a little slight, but I think as far as a guy who can throw the ball, very, very good. He's not immobile. He's a pretty good athlete. So he has that as well. I mean, he's not like Justin Fields or he's not like, Lamar Jackson. He's not that kind of a guy, but he can escape the pocket. He can make plays on the run. At his best, I think he's very good, but at his worst, he's completely terrible. And that's been kind of the problem with him for me. The inconsistency at this point of his career is a little bit, off-putting. You kind of hope he would be past that at this point. But I do think he's starting to come around. I think the Patriots game was kind of a wake-up call for him. Kind of like, you don't have to be a hero all the time. He trusts his arm, which is fantastic. You want that. But you also want him to know when to trust it, when to take the simple play, when not to fall back. He likes to drop back and then spin out backwards instead of stepping up in the pocket. That's a problem with him, I've noticed as well. So mixed bag right now for me, but I do think at his best, if he can reach his talent, he could be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I do believe that.
And it helps to have wide receivers. Garrett Wilson has done well. I mean, do you see him kind of being that number one receiver? And then talk about the rest of that group of receivers.
Yeah, it's kind of been building the past couple of years. Even everything going on with Elijah Moore, he's still a talented wide receiver. So he's one of the guys they drafted last year. And then this year they added Garrett Wilson as well. They got to find in Braxton Berrios, like nice little gadgety guy, also a good kick returner. So they got to find in him there. Corey Davis has been real steady this year. Last year he had problems with dropping the ball, but this year he's been really steady when he's healthy. And they're even starting to get something out of Denzel Mims now, which I didn't see coming. Especially he requested a trade in the offseason. He wasn't happy with his role, but he stuck with it, and he's a really good blocker for a running team. That's very, very important. And yeah, last week he had the biggest catch of the game on third down. He had the last conversion that they needed. The one pass they threw on that last drive against Buffalo, they went to him and he made the catch. So they're starting to round into form, but Garrett Wilson is just a special, special guy. He's got really strong hands, attacks the ball in the air. When you get it to him in space, he can make guys miss. And he's not a big guy. He's very, very thin, but he's just fantastic, and he runs fantastic routes. So he's definitely the guy they're grooming to be number one. And they moved him outside now, and I think that's where he's going to be for a while.
So yeah, the talent's there. What about Elijah Moore? I mean, talk about his situation a little bit.
All right, so we all know wide receivers want the ball. I mean, I think that's how they get paid, right? If you're not catching the ball, you could be the best blocking wide receiver in the league. You're not going to get paid your money while doing that. So I think that's where he's at. He wants the ball, and he wasn't getting many targets. And if you watch the games, though, he hasn't really been getting open. There are times where I'm specifically keeping an eye on him to see if he's getting separation, and he really hasn't been. So I don't know what it is. It could be the fact that he's not getting the ball that's making him less aggressive out there. But the Jets are committed to keeping him. They did the exact same thing with Mims. This is exactly what happened with Denzel Mims. And now that's kind of working out. So I think their mindset is, look, we took you in the second round. Right now, the way things are, we're not going to get equal value for you or even close to it. So we're going to stick with you, and hopefully we can work this thing out. I hope it works out because, I mean, I watched him in college, and he's a dynamic player. And now that they moved him to the slot, maybe now he's going to be there a little bit more. Get him the ball in space, maybe get him the ball in some running plays, maybe some end arounds, some jet sweeps, things like that. Start using him to rebuild up his confidence and his trust in the team. But yeah, it's not an ideal situation when your team's winning and you have one guy starting to complain. It's a little rough. It kind of puts a damper on things, but I think they've handled it well.
Well, yeah, and another role I wanted to player Tyler Conklin. I mean, that's kind of working out. I mean, fantasy wise, I've had stuck him in my lineup and just kind of leave him there. What about his role in this team, and then maybe the future for him?
Yeah, he and Zach developed a pretty good rapport in training camp, and that's kind of carried over when Zach got healthy again. Conklin's his targets started to pick up. He started to be more of a factor in the offense. I've always liked him. I had him last year fantasy as well when he was with Minnesota. And now I remember I'm in a dynasty league, and this year the Jets signed him. I'm like, oh, great. I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about changing it. I got a Jet on my team again. So I think he's fantastic, especially as a receiver. He had some drop problems early on in the year, but those seem to be gone. They also signed CJ Uzama. So he's another guy that they have there. But I think Tyler Conklin has a good future here. They did draft Greg Ruckert from Ohio State, who they're kind of grooming to be the guy going forward. But I think you can have Ruckert and Conklin and even Uzama as he's a better blocker. So maybe you can keep all three of them as a nice 3 tight end package going forward.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that in offense, the tight end is really important now in today's NFL, and I feel like teams are always looking for that next great talent, and I remember the draft, Ruckert's from the area, isn't he?
Yeah, he's from Long Island, actually, where I'm from. So it's very cool. I remember they talked about they had the cameras with his parents before the draft and when he got picked. And yeah, it's a cool scene to see that, especially when the local guy gets picked by your team. Very, very cool to watch and see. I'm rooting for him, obviously, see how he develops. I know talent-wise, he's fantastic. They say he's a little raw still, has to kind of learn to play the position. But, I mean, at Ohio State, I think he averaged like 23 yards a catch. Something crazy like that. He was kind of like their deep tight end guy that they went to. So it's going to be interesting to see how he develops. But this last draft for the Jets was just fantastic. Like, I can't even think of a bad pick at the moment. So
Yeah, and you look at it. I mean, one of their top picks, Brees Hall. I mean, when you look at this Jets stable of running backs, I mean, they really have a great group here, and now obviously adding James Robinson. First of all, talk about Brees Hall, and in his development, and then obviously losing him to injury.
yeah, the beginning of the year, Michael Carter was the top back. They started with him in that role, and then as the weeks progressed, it just became more and more clear that Carter's an excellent running back, but he doesn't have the breakaway ability that Brees Hall has, and the splash plays that Brees Hall can give you. That how quickly he did that and developed is amazing. He's really going to be a fantastic player going forward once he recovers from the injury. The Jets, I think they moved up to get him, if I remember correctly, a little bit. They moved up in the draft to make sure they got him because they were eyeing him. And yeah, I mean, he's not a player I did see a lot in college. I heard a lot about him, but I didn't actually watch him. But I see what all the hype was about because he's fantastic, man.
I'm an Iowa Hawkeye, and so I got a chance to watch him against my Hawks several times. So
Mhm.
yeah, very talented, and going forward, he's definitely going to be in the mix. But for 2022, um, how do you see James Robinson kind of coming, into this role, and is he going to take it over from Michael Carter, or is this just going to be Michael Carter kind of going forward this year?
I think they're going to stick with Carter. One thing Carter does very well is make yards after contact. And that's something I think that with the Jets offense the way it is, they want to rely on someone like that to have their lead back. Robinson obviously has proven he's a good player in this league. I believe he was like, wasn't he like he was undrafted, I believe,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, so I mean, obviously he's a self-made player if he's healthy, because there's still a question about his knee. When they traded for him, there was a question about his knee. And then even when he's played these two games, he's kind of he doesn't look like he has the burst. So I wonder if there is something still sitting there. But I mean, proven player. He's good out of the backfield receiving as well. So he's definitely a great addition. I think it's Michael Carter's is the lead back right now though, and he's kind of would be the secondary back. And then they have Ty Johnson too, who kind of fills in as the third down guy.
Yeah, and he's been around quite a bit too. So you look at this offense and defense, you know, they are, I hesitate to say the word complete team, right? But they are a talented team. When
Yes.
you look at the rest of the season, what are your expectations now? And have obviously they've adjusted from what you thought at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I hate this question, but my expectations now are the playoffs. That's my
Mm,
expectation. I'm not going to say
mhm.
anything further than that.
Yeah.
I mean, they did it before when the last two times they made the AFC Championship game with Mark Sanchez in his rookie year and his second year. So they've won this way before, where you lean on a defense and a good running game, and you only ask the quarterback to make big throws. But then on the flip side for me is they drafted Zach Wilson second. This was supposed to be about developing him. So I don't want to lose that focus either, right? I want
Mhm.
them to make sure they're doing both things at the same time. But right now, yeah, he would have to be the weak link. I can't lie. Like the quarterback was, he's only lost one game, the Patriots game. So you look at it that way, you're like, how could he be a weak link? But they've won in spite of him, not because of him.
Mhm.
So and the game that he did throw for 355 yards was the Patriots game that they lost. So the pattern and the plan right now is the running game and the defense, and Zach make the big throws when we need you to. And if they do that, I think they should make the playoffs. I mean, if they win on Sunday against New England, they're in first place. So I never would have thought that this year. So the fact that they're in this position is fantastic. As a fan of this team, even though in my mind I'm like, long term, will it set them back? Is this like just a blip, and then like they're gonna go back? I hope not. But more so, I think with the coaching staff, it's giving me more confidence in them. Salah's always been a very positive guy, rah-rah guy on the sideline. I remember him in San Francisco and, his defense over there, and he was always cheering guys when they came off the field. And he's very much that guy, and I think that's fantastic. But watching them have success now, it gives you a little bit more confidence that he does know what he's talking about, which is, to me, is the better part of what's going on.
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, he talked about the saving receipts. I mean, what were your thoughts when that came out? Obviously, it was just a punchline, nationally, but he's obviously the Jets have backed it up.
Yeah, I mean, I like those kinds of comments. I'm one of the types of guys who, if you're confident in something, definitely speak up. It does put a target on you for sure, no
Mm-hmm.
doubt. But I liked the comment, and I don't know if the team like is backing him. Obviously they are, but I don't know if consciously they're doing it. Just could be subconsciously, like, oh, coach made this comment. Now
Mm-hmm.
we have to go out there and play. But if that's what it took to get them to play to the maximum of their ability, then by all means, because that shows you he's a leader. They follow his lead. If he's saying, I'm going to take receipts, and the team's like, yeah, we got to go out there and do it for him. He's speaking on behalf of us.
I like these coaches. They're players, coaches. They're not just going to be the same kind of milk toast. They're going to say things, and they're going to, almost. I mean, obviously, the Jets are kind of used to that. With Rex Ryan almost
Oh yeah,
taking all of the attention away from players, and maybe it's for a good thing, for a good reason.
yeah. I mean, when Rex was here, Rex obviously is much more bombastic
Mm-hmm.
than Salah is. He says it all the time. But then they filled in those teams with guys who are like that. Like that's when they signed Bart Scott. Bart Scott's always been an outspoken guy. So the players kind of followed his personality and his lead, and they went with the same thing. And I think that's happening this way as well. I think the players they're always positive. I'll say that in post game. I watch most of the post game shows, even after the losses. They always remain positivity, and I think that's a testament to Salah's leadership. I've had issues with some of the assistants at times, but that's just, me being a fan and wanting them to every play to be a success, and the team to score the opposing team to score 0 points. That's what you always want.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you look at this season's been a success so far. I mean, you got New England, and you don't want to look ahead to any other games. But as a Bears fan, I did want to look ahead to Week 12 matchup. It's a lot different than I would have thought at the beginning of the year. And honestly, quite honestly, I looked at the start of the season, and I saw the Jets and the Giants, and I thought those are winnable games. Obviously, the Giants are not what a lot of people thought, and the Jets aren't either. So when
Right.
you look at this game, talk about maybe some of the keys for the Jets versus the Bears in Week 12.
I think the biggest key now is to contain the running back that Justin Fields has become.
Really? Yeah.
Like that's been like I heard today that they spoke after I don't remember which game it was, but they spoke to he went to the coaches and they installed some of the Ravens offense to emulate Lamar Jackson, and it's been working. I mean, Justin Fields, I still don't love him as a passer. I think there's certain times where he holds the ball too long, but hey, he's using his athleticism, and that to me now is the key to stopping them. He's been a one-man wrecking crew now for the past few weeks. Fantastic player. I liked him in college. I'll never forget was it the Rose Bowl? I forget what game where he had like 6 touchdowns or something. Like it was some crazy performance he had.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I've always known how talented this guy is. I wasn't sure how I was going to translate. I still think like he needs work definitely as a passer, but he's putting it all together. They're making things easier for him, cutting the field in half for him, and he's been fantastic. So that's the key for me. Definitely stopping him and keeping him in front of them, so he can't get out of the pocket. Try and keep him in contained.
Yeah. And when you look at it, I mean, he has the most crazy 555 yards since week 6, most rushing yards in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I went to the Dolphins Bears game and with a Dolphins fan and buddy of mine, and he was look at before the play, he would say, "Oh, it's going to be Justin Fields running left or right," and that would happen. And as a Bears fan, I'd love to see that. But also you want to see the passing game and you want to see some of the receivers. And I like that we've got Claypool. But in this game, against that secondary, I don't know if Claypool and some of these like even Mooney can have a big game. It's going to have to be Cole Kmet. You're going to have to keep going to him. And do you see Kmet? Are the tight ends, the Jets, doing well against tight ends this year?
I can't remember any tight end that's beaten them up. I'm trying to think of if they've even played an elite one though. Like I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I love Komet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very much aware of his talent and how good he is. So he is the guy. When I look at that team now, like I'm okay, they need to stop him because Fields has definitely developed a chemistry with him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the guy I look at. I'm trying to think who.
So let's see, Fryermuth with Steelers, right?
Yeah, he had a
And,
decent game.
mm-hmm.
He had a decent game against the Jets, if I remember correctly. Uh,
And
but that
then
was the game. That was the game where Zach Wilson actually did lead them to victory. That was
right.
the one game in the fourth quarter where he was fantastic. But yeah, I think. I mean, honestly, not many teams have done well passing against them overall.
Mm-hmm.
So, even last week it started out. Um, Stephon Diggs had that big 42-yard catch on the first play, and then I think he had like one catch or two catches the rest of the game. So if the Bears can stop the pass rush, I'm sure they'll maybe able to make some plays out there. But that's the Jet. It's really been a combination of good pass rush and great secondary play.
So with the Bears, they become a team that's a high-scoring game type of team. I had a fellow Bears podcaster, Matt Zahn, say that, and that's kind of what it is. So if this becomes a shootout, which Garrett Wilson, I don't know how the Bears stop him. Jalen Johnson's kind of taken a little bit of a step back, so I don't know how the Bears will stop the Jets' passing attack. How do you think the Jets would fare in a shootout? I mean, obviously they came back versus Cleveland, and that's probably been the closest shootout. I mean, obviously they blew out Miami. It looks like Pittsburgh 24-20. But if it was like a 34-30 game, I mean, do you think that would bode well for the Jets, or are they going to slow it down a little bit?
I mean, they're gonna if they stick to the formula, they're gonna try and run the ball. So they're gonna try and slow things down. The key if I was on the Bears side, I would definitely be stacking the box and saying, let's see if this kid can beat us. That's again, as much as I love his talent right now, he's the weakest part of the offense. So if I'm a defensive coach, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, I'm going to make this guy beat us. The problem last week, though, Buffalo tried to do that and it didn't matter. The Jets offensive line just pushed them around. That's been probably the biggest surprise for me because the Jets have lost key guys on the offensive line. They lost Elijah Vera Tucker, who's probably their best offensive lineman. Obviously, Mekhi Becton before the season even began. Dwayne Brown's been playing with a compromised shoulder. So they've had some problems. Max Mitchell, who was their rookie, was playing right tackle. He went out. He'll be back. He'll be back probably this week. So he'll be back for the Bears game. Yeah, it's been a patchwork unit, and they have really surprised me with how good they've been. So if I don't know if they could win a shootout at this point. I think talent-wise they could. Maybe by reintroducing Elijah Moore back to the offense would help a little bit. If they got into a shootout, then he's definitely a guy who they would be targeting. Barrios, another guy. He's a fast guy, twitchy guy. Get him the ball in space. He can do some things. But yeah, I mean, it would really depend on if we got the good version of Zach Wilson. And if we do, then I think they have a shot.
How has he done? How has Zach Wilson done on the road? Because this one obviously is in, or no, actually, this one is in New York. So,
Yeah, well, the Jets have been better on the road, actually.
mm-hmm.
So that might benefit the Bears if they're playing at MetLife. They've been better on the road. Yeah, I mean, he didn't play the first 3 games or 4 games. I can't remember which one. That was Joe Flacco for the most part. So, but like I said, he's only lost the Patriots game. And statistically, that was his best passing game performance, but his worst performance overall because he threw the 3 interceptions. And some of them were just atrocious. So, yeah, I don't know. I really don't know how to answer that. I do think that it should be a better game now because of how Fields is playing.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he was still playing the way he was playing earlier, I would feel much more confident that the Jets could win that game than I do now.
So, do you think the Jets are going to win this game?
Oh, don't put me on the spot.
I'll go ahead and talk before you. I'm going to say I do. I love that what Fields is doing, and there are a lot of Chicago fans that are kind of upset that they lost to Detroit, but the defense is just atrocious, and I don't expect them to with the talent the Jets have defensively, I don't expect the Bears to win this game. And I'm okay with that because as a Bears fan, I'm not measuring this season on wins and losses.
Right.
So I mean, so with that being said, I would pick the Jets.
I guess I'm going to have to. I
Mhm.
mean, not that I think they can lose every game as well. So it's not like I'm with supreme confidence that I'm saying they're going to win. But yeah, from what I've seen, especially on the defensive side of the ball, this team is very hard to score on now. So, I do think I'd have to, because again, I know the Bears don't have the greatest skill position players. I think if they had a little bit more on the outside, maybe. Um, I do like it's Montgomery, right? I do like him.
Mhm.
And then Khalil Herbert's the other one, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
I do think they have good running backs. So, and the Jets have given up a little bit more in the running game than I thought they would. So if they can run the ball a little, like I said, especially with Fields playing the way he is, I could see them winning. But this team has been very well prepared this year, and they've taken these games one at a time. They don't look ahead. So, yeah, I'm going to pick the Jets. But again, I'm not super confident. And anytime I pick them, I'm not confident in picking them.
Hey, that's how I've been in the past with the Bears. But I like some of their players. Jack Sanborn out of Wisconsin has been. I mean, he was like one of the final players that they kept around at linebacker for the Bears. He's actually starting to kind of come into his own. Had his first start and just so I like some of the young players, but they're young and this one will be on the road. You know, I just want to see them compete. And when you have a team against a team with all those first rounders, all that top talent, it's really tough to compete for 4 quarters.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I do have a question though. What was the reasoning behind trading Roquan Smith? Because I don't understand that move.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I was 100% behind that. So he was wanting a new contract, and he was negotiating himself, right? And
Right.
that's tough because, like, I think it's like when you have a garage sale, right? You value your stuff more than other people. Other people want a deal, and at the front office they want a deal, but they want to look at all their assets and. I just don't think they were ready. The Bears aren't ready to win in the playoffs right now, and so he didn't fit for this year. They got a good asset, for him,
Yeah.
right? And he still may even. I mean, I don't know if it'll actually happen, but he still possibly could in the offseason then sign with him, right?
Yeah.
So so I was not up in arms with that because they need to be honest about where they are right now. Like he was not going to help them. If they kept him on the roster, he was not going to be on a Super Bowl winning team for the Bears. It's just not going to happen. There's so many holes. So, and you look at Jack Sanborn, his emergence. You got younger players, cheaper players. I think the Bears need to do that with what Ryan Pace had done in the past with the Bears. So, yeah, I mean, you talk about kind of like the Bears have just been, mediocre for if not, terrible for a while here. So
All right. I mean, he's not old.
he's not, but he wanted a ton of money, right? And the Bears have a ton of cap space, right? But I like what Ryan Poles is doing now and being strategic with younger players and building it up because this, you want a team that's going to compete for the long run, not just what they've tried to do in the past, and it hasn't worked.
Yeah. Maybe they just don't value linebackers. They gave up on Khalil Mack too. So
Well, but that's the thing too. He was on the downturn, injuries, right? And for me, like, it's all about flipping for assets. I mean, when you look at the Jets, right? I mean, they've done that and they
yes.
have all of these picks and all this talent, and now,
I mean,
they're positioned.
Yeah, Jamal Adams, obviously the most famous one recently, where they did the same thing. They flipped a guy who was still young, wanted to get paid top safety. They don't view it as obviously a premier position. So they moved on from him, and they drafted like 3 of their starters now are pretty much from Jamal Adams. So
Right. So, I mean, at the time you were probably frustrated by it or.
No, I was okay
Yeah.
with it
Yep.
because I understood what they were doing. I think linebacker is a more premium position though, so I would have been a little more trepidatious doing something like the Bears did. But when it's a strong safety who really is more
Mhm.
of a linebacker, he's not a great cover guy,
Mhm.
and just how he handled it too, like he was very diva esque. I want to say I had enough with him. I got to the point where like, yeah, this guy is just not worth it. And it's
Mhm.
turned out that he really isn't. I mean, he's been good in Seattle, but he got hurt this year, so he's out. But they paid him a ton of money, and I don't see that ever benefiting them at all. So I understand the reason behind Smith. In my head, though, was just that he's young and super productive. So I was wondering why they did it. That was all.
Yeah, yeah, a great question. But yeah, I'm similar to kind of where you are with Jamal Adams, and it just kind of understanding why, it's just they are premium positions, but also you want someone who's going to want to be there and not, you know, because the when I talk about kind of garage sale, right? I think it's important for these players to have agents, because they can separate the emotion out of it. As a player, you can't. You're like, I mean, uh, when you're doing a garage sale, oh, this was so important to me,
Yeah.
whatever. You just need to separate the emotion out of it, and that's what these agents are able to do, and able to say, okay, well, these are the numbers, and this is where the production is going, and just able to just kind of look at it less emotionally, right? And more, specifically on all of those things. So we'll see how it turns out. But the problem is Ryan Pace had gotten the Bears in such a bad place, and trying to find a quarterback and overpaying, draft wise in the past. And thankfully he did get Fields. But I mean, that, as you know, as a Jet fan, that's a pretty important position.
It's the most important position.
It
Quarterback's
is.
the most important position. So yeah, I mean, if you're, if this recent streak of Fields is what he's going to be,
Hmm.
then you have your guy. Like, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. And then you could build around him and take it from there. So yeah, I mean, that is the most important one to get. And GM's careers are made on it, which I mean, they didn't pick him. The current regime didn't pick Fields. So if he didn't, that's a great thing for them too. Because if he didn't work out, like,
Hmm.
oh, it wasn't our guy. We didn't pick him. So they could have
Right.
just moved on from him and not had and picked their own guy, which is what happened with the Jets. They God, why am I forgetting his
Sam
name?
Darnold.
Yeah, this current regime, Joe Douglas inherited Sam Darnold. So when it was time to make a decision, it wasn't like, oh, I invested in this guy. They were like, no, we're getting rid of him. Well, we're going to move on to Wilson.
So
So
yeah, I guess that's my question. Like, when you what is the difference between Wilson and Sam Darnold?
the biggest thing to me is talent.
Mm,
I just think Zach Wilson's more talented.
mm,
There's no, I'm not going to argue. I wouldn't argue with anyone on it because Darnold to me, decent arm, not a great arm. Decent mobility, not great mobility. Wasn't good at escaping the pocket. Didn't have good pocket presence. Zach is still working on that as well, but I think his is a little better just because he can escape and get away from things and just being able to make off scripted throws. That's the reason why they drafted Wilson because he can do things that other guys can't. So I just look at it as a talent thing, Zach has a much higher ceiling than Sam Darnold had. Sam Darnold was supposed to be a guy who came into the league and you just plug and play and he'd be fine, like great. I never saw it because again, being a Notre Dame fan, I watched a lot of
mhm.
USC games and I never thought he was that good, but they did. And everyone did because most people thought he was going to be the number one pick, not Baker Mayfield. Funny how that whole draft worked out looking back, but
Yeah.
right. But yeah, like the main difference I see between them really is just talent level. I think Zach Wilson just has a much higher ceiling than Sam Darnold ever had. Will he get there? I don't know. There's sometimes I wonder why this regime took him when they play such a more of a timing based offense with leaning on the running game. It's pretty much the San Francisco offense that they run, and I don't think you need a guy with a super big arm to run that offense. But I guess they saw the same thing I did. If Zach Wilson can reach his talent level, you have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So that's what I think they saw. Will he get there again? I have no idea. I see flashes of it. There's times I'm like, holy crap, how did he do that?
Mm-hmm.
There's times I'm like, God, why did he do that? So it's kind of the ebb and flow right now of what he is. But when he's good, he's very good.
Well, speaking of getting there and ceilings, which team gets to the Super Bowl first, the Giants, the Jets?
You know what? I've learned in my life as a Jets fan never to say them. Just because the Giants in my life have been to four and won three of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in my head, I'm always going to lead and say the Giants just because I don't want to be disappointed. But talent-wise right now, the Jets are much, much better. So if again, it all predicated on the quarterback. If Wilson becomes what they think he can be, they can be a Super Bowl team next year. It just really depends on him.
And the tough thing too is when you look at it, I mean, talent wise, you can't look at it in a vacuum either. The Giants almost I hesitate to say this, but the Giants almost have an easier path to a Super Bowl, right? In the NFC side.
Yeah.
The Packers going down, the 49ers are going to be there, but the Vikings now are emerging, Eagles, but on the AFC, I mean, you've got Patrick Mahomes, you've got all of these teams, Joe Burrow, now the Dolphins, so when you look at it, if the Jets would get there, it almost would be a better feat.
Yeah. If the playoff, I saw something today. If the playoff started today, all four AFC East teams would be in. So it tells you how tough their division is. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely shaping up to be the much stronger conference. Like you mentioned, for the quarterbacks you mentioned, Burrow, Mahomes, Josh Allen.
That's right. I didn't even bring up the Bills.
Yeah, like there's, I'm not completely sold on Tua. I think they've structured an offense around what he does very well.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have two speedy guys like Waddle and Hill, obviously, they make anyone's job easier.
They do.
Yeah.
I would say I went to the Bears Dolphins game and I sat up higher, so I was able to see a few things, and it was interesting. Like, I think, he may not have like the biggest arm, but he's able to put things where they need to, because he threw one. It looked like he was overthrowing a receiver, but he was actually throwing it over his head to the other receiver, and he placed it just where he needed to. So I think Tua has the talent enough to lead the team to where they need to go. But I think he does need those top receivers like Hill and Waddle, and so whereas there's some quarterbacks that can kind of take it all on themselves, Tua is maybe not there, but he still can be a quarterback for a winner.
Yeah, his accuracy is top notch, and anytime, like, he kind of reminds me of Chad Pennington in that way.
Yeah,
for so many years, who didn't have a great arm, but he just placed the ball perfectly, and you could win with him. So that's kind of who he reminds me of a little bit. He's shorter than Pennington was, but in the way the game's played now, I think passing lanes are a lot easier to find. So I do think, I'm not saying he's bad. He's obviously been very good for them this year. I'm not sold on him as being the guy, that MVP guy that people are talking about. I don't see that kind of talent.
I would agree. I wouldn't say, yeah. Well, looking at sharing a stadium with the Giants, what are your thoughts on that, and how is that working out?
It's always been the case, even before it was MetLife. When it was Giants Stadium, the Jets played there. So I've always known that to be what it is. This new one, though, MetLife is just such a terrible arena.
Really?
Because neither team has complete ownership of it, everything is done by the lighting. So like when the Jets are there, everything's green, and then when the Giants are there, everything's blue, and it just looks cheap. It looks like neon lights, like just thrown around the stadium. Kind of like I always say it kind of looks like the red light district in Amsterdam.
Nice.
But for football. So I don't like it. There's really no culture there because it's a shared stadium. So I've never liked it. I'm really, really upset. The Jets at one point I want to say like 10, 15 years ago, they were discussing a stadium on the west side of Manhattan. There was a bunch of land there, and they were going for that. And then James Dolan, who owns the Knicks and the Garden, pretty much did everything he could to shoot that down. So I've always been upset about that, but it sucks. I totally want them to have their own place. It's just that they split the bill on this one. It was $1.2 billion to build it. They didn't put a roof. That's the other thing. Like, why would you not, at that point, just pay the extra to get the damn roof? So, but because of the reasons I said, that really neither team can make a claim that it's their stadium, it sucks. I hate it.
Yeah, you look at it. I mean, there was the whole thing last year too with the Giants and the free medium soda for for was it season ticket holders. I thought that was kind of a little bit cheap as well.
Well, when you have the stadium in Atlanta giving like normal prices for concessions, like in my head, I'm like, who cares about that? Like, what?
Yeah, no, what? Yeah,
like, who gives a crap? Like, that stadium is fantastic, and they're giving you could go there and not, have to spend a week's paycheck to pay for everything. Yeah, man, it's just sad. I mean, we live in one of the most expensive areas in the country here in the New York area. And you would think they would want to give you kind of a break. These billionaires who own both teams, who can pay all these players and these coaches ridiculous salaries, and let's give the fans a break. But no, we don't get that here. So,
well, yeah, it's, you look at the NFL. I mean, they just printing money with how popular it is and everything, and I don't see them changing. And we talk about another popular icon. Obviously, we'll kind of move on to baseball. I had a chance. I live in the Milwaukee area, so I had a chance to see Aaron Judge. His I believe it was 56, 57, and 58 here in Milwaukee at that game, and it was just that last one I was just like, because I actually went to a couple of the games. I went Saturday and Sunday. Didn't see any on Saturday, but saw that on Sunday, and I was just I was excited. Talk about that historic season and his future with the Yankees.
Well, first, if you look behind me, that's all Yankee memorabilia.
Yep.
Yeah. So just really quickly, if you're looking over my shoulder, you can see who I root for. But yeah, I mean, it was that just how the whole thing unfolded, like not signing the contract, betting on himself, and then having this kind of a season. I mean, you couldn't have asked for anything better. So it was so much fun to be a fan of the team and to watch it. And when they were really struggling, he carried them. And it's very rare in baseball where you have one guy who can carry your offense, but he did. And it was so awesome. Just this whole summer was great because the Mets were good too. And it was like, baseball is such a big thing in this area. It's probably still the number one sport in the New York area. And just to have both teams playing well, and then him having this historic season, it was fun. But then the whole season, you're thinking, is he going to be here next year? Like, it's in the back of your mind when all this is happening. So it was definitely something in the back of my mind, in the back burner. If you listen to Straight Outta Gotham, Pete's a big Yankee fan as well, and we talked about it on that show, which is not a sports show at all, but we actually got into it on that show. So I do think he'll wind up staying. I think it's beneficial for him. I think he knows what being a Yankee means. I think he knows, since he's a homegrown Yankee as well. They drafted him. He's been here this entire time. I think he will wind up staying. I wouldn't be shocked if he left, because I know he's a California kid. He's a mild-mannered guy. Maybe he doesn't love being in this powder keg of media because it's crazy. I mean, it really is a crazy media, as anyone knows. If you live in a big city, I mean, New York is the biggest media market, but if you live in Chicago or Boston or any of these big sports towns, it's always rough. But yeah, he handles it well. I'll say that. He's very, very good at handling. He's very, 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 very much like Derek Jeter used to handle it. He's very similar to that. I do think him being the captain of the Yankees means something to him. And that's the talk, is if he does stay, they're going to make him the captain, the next captain. So I do think he'll stay for those reasons, but I would not be surprised if he left. Would not be.
Yeah, I'm a Cubs fan, but so I was probably one of the only ones I won't call it Miller Park, in American Family Field in Milwaukee, cheering for, and obviously I was cheering for Rizzo. Saw Rizzo hit a home run as well. Um, but when you look at it, I mean, he was able to handle the crowd. I mean, just gracious, and obviously at that point, people were cheering for him even in Milwaukee, and just the way he was able to, handle. I mean, had just an amazing game under that type of pressure, and really come through. I mean, he had like the 3 home runs, but he had. I mean, he had a double. I mean, he just had an amazing game. And so when you look at that talent and just his composure, obviously as a Cubs fan, I'd like to see him with Chicago, but I don't know. Some of these players do care about legacy, and being a Yankee does mean something.
Yeah, like that's if it was any other organization, I'd probably
Mhm.
wouldn't. I'd probably tell you I have no idea. Like I really don't know where he's going to end up. But because, like I said, he's a Yankee. This is the only team he's ever known. He's had great success here this last season. I mean, because Roger Maris was a Yankee too, so he had all that extra fanfare thrown into it, chasing the record. That doesn't happen anywhere else, right? It would have been a big deal, but it wouldn't have been as big a deal. So I think he really understands what that means, and I hope he stays. If the Yankees make a decision not to keep him for money reasons, or to spread that money around to try and improve other areas of the team, because I mean, let's be honest, they get there every year, but they failed. They keep failing. They can't beat the Astros. So that's something they need to consider too. So I could definitely see the Yankees turning away if he wants too much. But I do think at the end of the day, cooler heads prevail, and he winds up staying in New York.
Growing up in the '90s, I don't think that's ever a statement I thought a Yankee fan would ever say. Not signing a player for too much, because they were always signing the big players. But you look at what it means to win a World Series in a particular town, and Chicago obviously is one of those. 2016 with the Cubs. I mean, everyone on that team, legends, forever. But in New York, if you win a title, I mean that's huge as well. And so when you look at this team, let's just go ahead and I know you don't like to do this. Uh, we'll assume that Judge does sign. When is the next World Series title for the Yankees? I mean, is it they get there, which is completely different from the '90s. I mean, if they got there in the '90s, they were winning it, right? So it's
Right.
kind of flipped. They get there, they just can't, get over the hump recently. So when do you see the next title coming?
Uh, when they get the next Mariano Rivera.
Yeah, that's helpful.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, no. I don't know. I think they're kind of in a weird place right now because they
Mhm.
do have the Judge situation. He's 30 years old. He's going to be 31 when the season begins. So if they keep him for long term, you're talking about probably a contract definitely into his late 30s, maybe even 40 if he gets that many years. So that's a big financial investment. They
Mm.
already have Giancarlo Stanton on a large deal as well. So that's two guys making all that money. Garrett Cole's still fairly young, so I'm not worried about that. But it depends. Does Luis Severino come back to be the pitcher he was before he got hurt 2 years ago? He showed signs of it, but will he be that guy? What are they going to keep Nestor Cortez, and what's he going to be going forward? Are any of the younger players like Volpe or Justin Volpe in the minors or Florial, who we've been hearing about for years, like these younger guys who are in the minors who are supposed to be key prospects, are they going to pan out? Both Cabrera, Oswaldo Cabrera, and I'm forgetting the other guy, Peraza. Both of those guys came up this year, and they showed they could play at least in the majors. They're Major League Baseball players, but are they going to take the next step and become that player? Those players, and the Yankees again are in a weird spot because are you going to go in that direction, or are you going to try and re-sign Rizzo, keep Judge, go back with the older players? They made a big commitment to DJ LeMahieu too. He's still going to be under contract. So it's really hard to answer the question of when the next World Series title is going to happen. Again, I know they're always going to be in the conversation because that's just how the Yankees operate and how they're built.
Mhm.
But I really don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to address the pitching staff? If they sign Judge, are they going to go over? Now they have a budget. They operate like every other team now. So are they going to exceed it to try and do this? There's a lot of variables with the Yankees now. With that, when Steinbrenner was alive, I never had to worry about. Like I always knew he was going to spend the money to get whoever it was. It's more of a level playing field now. So it's very tough to answer that question. But I can see it if everything breaks right. I can see it happening next year. They could win a World Series title next year. I don't see that being far-fetched. Do I think that's going to happen? No.
It would be helpful if they hired George Costanza again, I think. But, with that, then is Cashman, I mean, is he to blame for not being able to win this, the big one?
I do think I don't like the analytic-driven style of baseball, and it's pretty much all around now. So I can't even say, oh, the Yankees do it and nobody else does. It's pretty much how everyone operates. Mm-hmm. So I don't like how the manager doesn't have sole discretion to make decisions about the team during the season. It's a collective thing that they all discuss. Like, no, that's not baseball to me. Mm-hmm. So is Cashman to blame on multiple levels? Yes. He's to blame for not putting together the best team. He's to blame for not making the right decisions during the season. If he's definitely involved in it, then he's part of the problem. I would have moved on from him. They already said they're not going to. So I don't know. I'm really tired of him. I think they need another guy in that seat. He's been there longer than any GM, I believe, in baseball right now. So for me, it's done. Like, enough. Let's move on. Let's get a fresh voice in here. A different guy might do different things, might prioritize different things, because it's clearly they're good enough, but they're not great. And that's kind of where I'm at with the team and how they built the team, like signing Josh Donaldson or trading for Josh Donaldson and things like that. Just it hasn't worked. Like he'll find Nestor Cortez, he'll be great, and then he'll trade for Josh Donaldson, and he craps the bed. So like it's very, very much been this weird kind of thing recently, and I don't know about the young guys yet. I can't really comment. Volpe's supposed to be this great shortstop, but I haven't seen him play yet, so I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like Theo Epstein probably, I mean, he did it right. You win the 2016 World Series with the Cubs and you don't stick around too much longer because, I mean, you can't do much more. And now he's going to be a legend in Chicago forever. Now, I get it's probably tough to leave such a storied franchise as the Yankees, but, with Cashman, sometimes, with any organization, it is good to have just a new voice. And, obviously the Yankees are always going to have the expectations. It's New York, it's the Yankees. But you need something in to kind of, switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, you do. And again, I always have problems talking about the Yankees because I really have nothing to complain about as a fan. Like they've won. The four teams I root for, they're the only one that's ever won for me. Except well, the Islander. I'm an Islander fan in hockey. When I was little, they won, but I don't remember it. Right. So the Yankees are the only team that's ever won anything for me. So I really have a hard time ever complaining about them. And I remember when they were bad in the early 90s. Like I remember those teams. So like I don't have just the great dynasty years to fall back on. I do remember when things were rough. So I'm kind of in that weird spot, and I appreciate that they're always in the conversation. So in that regard, Brian Cashman's been a part of that. Like, why can't, that's great. But yes, there's a part of me now. It's like, okay, we are the Yankees. It's been 13 years. Enough is enough. Let's go. Right. It's time to move on.
Well, speaking of, just want to touch briefly on a team that hasn't come through, and as a Bulls fan, I'm glad they haven't come through. But I mean, when you look at the Knicks, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, they've gotten there before, but haven't pulled it off. I mean, it's probably as interesting. You probably look at it, and when they got to the finals with Allen Houston and that crew, that was probably not even expected, right?
It wasn't. They were the 8th seed that year. So yeah, that was a magical run. It was so much fun being a part of it. It's weird. New York is definitely a baseball town. But when
Mhm.
the Knicks are good, it's a basketball town.
Oh,
100%. They take over the conversation.
I would say because I was I was making out the other night. I was making out some of my you know bucket lists for sporting events, and seeing a basketball game in Madison Square Garden was just, I mean, that was automatically on there. And I don't care if the Knicks are good or bad. That just seems like an event to me.
Yeah, I mean, every player feels that way too. That's why I feel like they always have their best games when they come here. It's definitely been rough because especially under James Dolan's leadership, it's been a
Hmm.
very, very rough go. He's made some terrible decisions with front office hires. Uh, they've just haven't. They've never been in the years they needed to be bad. They weren't, so they missed out on the great player. Um, most recently was probably, I mean, probably the a couple years ago when they did make the playoffs and they had that nice little run and Julius Randle was so good. Uh, that was a year they should have been bad.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my friends on the podcast, we always talk about, they're like one draft away. We say it all the time. They're one draft away from being a really good basketball team. They've made strides. I mean, they did some smart signings this year. They're not making the bad trades anymore.
Hmm.
I give a lot of credit to Leon Rose for doing that, for not making the bad trades, not making the bad signings. I like the Jalen Brunson move. I think he's very good. He's very solid. He's a legitimate point guard, which they haven't had here in forever. I'm a big fan of RJ Barrett. But I don't think him and Julius Randle can play together. They're
Hmm.
very similar in how they play. So, and that shows. Like when one guy's out, the other guy plays better. It's always the case. So yeah, it's been this season's been a little bit shocking in how they've lost games.
Hmm.
I mean, they were up huge against Atlanta last week. They're up 23 points in the first half, and then they lost by like 14. Same thing yesterday against the Thunder. They scored 48 points in the first quarter, and they wound up losing by 10. Like it's just it doesn't make sense. Something's not right. I think it's the coach. I don't think Tom Thibodeau is a good coach for the current NBA game.
Agreed. Yep.
So that's where I am. But they're one of the basketball and football are my two favorite sports. So the Knicks are one of the teams that no matter how bad they are, I will still continue to watch the games and torture myself, watching it. But yeah, it's been rough. It's been
Yeah,
rough.
the NBA is so I feel like when a season starts, there's only a few teams that kind of have that opportunity to kind of get there. Now it's really kind of opened up the last couple of years with the Lakers, struggling and whatnot. But you still have the West powers and all of that, and you have some of these other teams in the East kind of making strides. Cleveland, Atlanta obviously has, and Boston. And so, I mean, the NBA I feel like it's cyclical. Like, you got a few teams that will just, be dominant for a while and then be down. But, the Knicks, yeah, I mean, you talk about that one good draft, and because you need star players to compete in the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, not only for the season, but for when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean they are lacking that one superstar player. They didn't get Donovan Mitchell. There was a lot of talk over the summer they were going to get Donovan
Hmm.
Mitchell.
Hmm.
Wound up not happening. The more you look into it, I think that was just Danny Ainge playing them. I don't think he ever intended to trade him here.
Hmm.
So, looking back at that now, I think a lot of Knick fans look at that and say, "Oh, they didn't get him." And in my head, I'm like, if you read between the lines, he was never cut. They were never trading him here. That's why every time you heard about a new offer, it was always more. Like they always
Hmm.
wanted more. So I'm like,
Yeah.
he's not serious. It's not a serious. He's not seriously playing with the Knicks. And then as soon as the Knicks said, "Yeah, we're good," he's traded to Cleveland. It was like immediate. So that
Hmm.
trade was already done. So
And it's got to be so weird. I mean, you think about the Knicks and what they mean to the NBA. I mean, anytime you have like New York, Chicago, these teams, um, being good. I mean, it's good for the whole NBA, but to kind of lose out to Cleveland, it's, I don't know. I mean, obviously, as a Bulls fan, I'm glad to see the Knicks down a little bit, but especially now that they have Thibodeau and Derrick Rose, D Rose, but uh, obviously he's not playing as much of a factor this year.
no, he should be. because none of the other guys who are playing in front of him have distinguished themselves at all. They're trying to get. I mean, clearly they're trying to play Emmanuel quickly, who's younger. They're trying to squeeze in the younger guys there because even Evan Fournier now is not playing as much. They're playing Cam Reddish. They're playing the other younger players, but it's kind of like they're trying to do two things at once. So they're trying to play the young guys and develop the young guys, but then they're trying to win as well at the same time. So that's why Julius Randle plays 38 minutes a game. No matter what he does, he's the one guy who could do anything he wants, and there's no repercussions for him. They don't take him out. He doesn't get benched. Doesn't get told to stop shooting. Nothing. He gets to do whatever he wants. And he's kind of tied to the coach. I feel Thibodeau, because of that one season, I feel Thibodeau feels, he's my guy. That's the reason why I won Coach of the Year, and we made that run. So I feel like they're kind of connected. And it's just today, because of what happened yesterday, there was a report that his seats Thibodeau's seats getting a little warmer. So I hope they move on from him. They're going on the out west right now, and if they show out like they did the last few games, where they take these big leads and then blow them and get blown out, like it's not like they blow it and it's close. It completely flips. It completely goes from them being up by a lot to them losing by a lot, and it's really, really frustrating.
Well, yeah, and from what I know of him when he was in Chicago, I mean, he really wears on his players in practice, and I mean, I feel like Allen Iverson would have been out of the league in a couple of years under him.
Yeah, it's everywhere he goes. When he was in Minnesota, the same thing. Like they made the playoffs the first year, they look like they'd be on the rise, and then it completely falls apart, right? And that's what happened here. He's first year, the Coach of the Year, they make the playoffs. Last year was terrible, and this year, I mean, they're only one game of. It's only 13 games in, so it's really hard to say. But with this current road trip, I think they're going to be a lot further under 500 afterwards. After it, yes, I don't think this is going to work out too well for them. So,
who would you like to see coach the Knicks?
Well, I wanted them to hire Kenny Atkinson when the Nets got rid of him. It worked out so perfectly. The Nets fired him, and I'm like, the Knicks need a coach. He's from Long Island. He's a Long Island guy. He loves New York. He started his career here as an assistant. I think he would come back in a heartbeat. He's been in Golden State now. He's on the Warriors staff, so that was probably a great experience for him. Learning under Kerr and gaining some knowledge, playing with coaching Steph Curry and all those great guys out there. So I think now he would be, again, it'd be advantageous for the Knicks to say, yeah, look, we screwed up the first time. He was right in our backyard. Let's bring him back. Let's hire him here. That's who I'd like to see them hire. I fear they would go the college route, which I don't want to see. But Kenny Atkinson's the name the only guy I would call, and I would make sure he's hired no matter what.
What about the guy from Boston? You're not really interested in him?
Udoka?
Yeah.
No, I'm not. The Knicks don't have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
So those two guys could make up for a lot of ails. Like I said, the Knicks have talent. They have very good talent. They don't have great talent. Those two guys are great talents. So they can make some coaching decisions look a lot better because of how great they are. And the Knicks also don't have Marcus Smart, who I don't like because he's a pain. But every team needs that player that every other team hates. The Knicks don't have that guy either. So I'm not so sure how good a coach Udoka is. I think he's a player's coach. I think players like playing for him because he was a player and he understands the young players now. I think that's a good thing. But I think the Knicks right now need a coach who's just going to play the players to their strengths and not try and fit them into play this system that's outdated and hasn't worked since the late 90s.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a lot of fun. We've covered a ton of stuff. Definitely appreciate you coming on. Where can everyone find you again?
All right. So you can find me on Twitter at Finally33, spelled Finale33. If you're into comic book stuff and movies and pop culture, you can check out the Straight Outta Gotham podcast. And on Twitter, that's at straight_O_G. If you are a Knicks fan and you're watching this and you want to catch all Nicked Up, we record every Wednesday night. We've been doing the live stream every Wednesday. It's been after a game. The Knicks have played every Wednesday so far. But if there's no game, we try and go live 9 Eastern time. If there's a game, immediately after the game, we'll hop on and discuss that game, and everything else going on there. The Twitter handle for that is at all_Nicked_up. And yeah, that's it. That's my social media profile right now.
All that stuff. Well, yeah, make sure to like, subscribe, catch you on YouTube as well.
Yes, yeah, I do have.
Okay.
There's a YouTube for both All Nicked Up and for Straight Outta Gotham. We got to start doing more live streams on Straight Outta Gotham. We talk about it all the time, but I just started a new job and Pete's always busy, so it's hard to kind of narrow the time down to do it. But yeah, with a lot of, especially with a lot of the stuff that's been going on in pop culture and fandom, it'd be a good time for us to start doing some live streams. But yeah, there's a YouTube page for Straight Outta Gotham and for All Nicked Up, exactly the way they're spelled. Check them out.
Well, especially with Black Adam and Superman coming back as well.
Yeah,
A ton of stuff there. So, yeah, I definitely appreciate you doing this, and I look forward to following you on all of those channels. And yeah, thanks again. Once again, this has been NFL Outdated Coverage 2 series on the New York Jets, New York Knicks, and pretty much everything New York, and even the Yankees. So thanks again. Appreciate you, Eric.
thanks, man. This was great. Let's do it again sometime.
Let's do it. Have a great night.